We'll call the February 7th evening meeting to order. I'd like to welcome those of you in attendance tonight, both here in person and watching on YouTube. Did want to make an announcement. You see we have 2 empty seats. Commissioner Wood was called away today due to work purposes. Commissioner Dickie Braswell had a basketball game for his daughter who's playing her last middle school basketball game, and wanted to make sure he got that in since that's our last one. So we are down to Commissioner Braswell may make it, but at this time it doesn't look like it. So the first item on the agenda is announcement. This morning we had written ballots for election for 3 of our boards. I'd like to go over those results now. For the planning board, those appointed to the planning board were Adam Caldwell, Michelle Pace Davis, Debbie Edwards Howard, and Freddie Hudson Jr. To our Johnston County Board of Health, Gary W. Carter was appointed, and to the Johnson Lee Harnett Community Action Board, Derek Applewhite Jr. was appointed. The first item on the agenda is approval and discussion of the agenda. We did have an item removed. The CubeSat representatives asked that their item be postponed for tonight. So other than that, are there any other adjustments that we may make to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the agenda with the deletion of number 2.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is public comments. If there's anyone in the audience who wish to make a public comment, please come forward at this time. If you would, state your name and the general area that you're from. Also remember that you have about 3 minutes to speak, and we may ask that you maintain decorum and make comments in a civil manner, and no personal attacks will be tolerated. So with that,
People have been doing that?
you never know. You never know. So we just wanted to make
That's
sure we
first
got
time
that.
for everything, Jim.
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
Joe Preston, live in Johnston County, Wilson's Mills area. Chairman, other commissioners, I just want to make a suggestion. It doesn't have anything to do with the vote that you had this morning, but you do have some appointments that you guys have selected, and some of these appointments, as you know, have a very heavy influence on what's going on with some of the decisions in our county, specifically the health board. I did put my name in for the general public seat. It appears you just appointed the incumbent there, and I have no problem with that. What I would say is, on positions like that do have such a heavy influence, to at least have some sort of interview process or a phone call or something, because the way that it worked was we got the announcement that there was a post available, and then if you want to, you can put your name in the hat, but then that was pretty much it. And what was sent, the application, was very benign in nature, I would say. Stating your name, things like that, what's your background. But to make a decision on something like that without ever speaking to the candidates or anything like that, I think might be a disservice to the public when it's not an elected position. So I would just make the recommendation on any of these appointments that are not elected officials. It's just an appointment, to possibly have a more thorough vetting process on the candidates that are involved, so that you can get a true feel of who the right person is for that position, if that makes sense. Like I said, you've appointed Gary Carter. Congratulations to him. But nobody else, I don't think, was ever spoken to or had a conversation with about that. So I would say in the future, when you're going forward with these appointments, because once again, I feel that should be an elected position. But at the very least, an appointment, if you're the ones that are electing them, you need to have some sort of actual dialogue with them to make sure that you're getting the right person. And I just wanted to come here and say that. Does anybody have any questions?
Good point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kelly Ashley. My address is 140 Southgate Drive, Garner. According to the Johnston County Register of Deeds, I have owned that property for 32 years. In November of 2020, I submitted a request for public records. I did not receive the records I requested. Again, in December 2021, I again submitted a request for records. I still did not receive the records I requested. As a business person in this county, I get to decide who I sign a contract with. As a business person in this county, I get to decide who I hire to build a house. As a business person in this county, I get to decide where I purchase building material. As a business person and property owner in this county, I get to decide who is allowed to enter real property that I own. Non-elected judicial employees of the county do not have authorization to force me from real property that I own. Johnston County employees that do not have judicial power do not get to determine the documents filed with the Register of Deeds reflecting my ownership do not matter. Employees of Johnston County that are not elected officials do not get to take away my right to free speech. They do not get to take away my right to justice, liberty, and due process. They do not get to take away my right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. They do not have the right to use my property to be taken away. I have a right to use my property. I have a right to earn a living, and I have a right to feel safe in my own home. Why does county employees do not understand what a court order is, and why do county employees not understand what a restraining order is? Please provide me with the public records I have requested. And please provide me of an explanation why a county employee that is not elected and does not have judicial authority have the standing to take away my rights as a property owner, a business person, and a citizen of this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Lee.
Denton Lee, 2 Annandale Drive, Clayton, North Carolina. I just came tonight in Ted's favorite color, just so I could thank you on behalf of the hospital, Johnston Hospital Health, for supporting All in Red month, which is the month of February. And thank you for what you do. The more we can publicize it, the more people can be aware of how deadly cardiovascular disease is. There are so many among us that have diseases or have hereditary diseases, and they just are not aware of it. And every 36 seconds, we lose a person in the United States to cardiovascular disease. 80% of those who arrive at the hospital with stroke symptoms arrive too late for the hospital to be able to serve them properly or stop them from being devastated by the stroke. So thank you for supporting that. Thank you for continuing to do that. And I'll put on my other hat from Johnston Health Foundation. I'll put on my Cleveland School hat. And thank you for supporting, continuing to support the development of our Booker Park. And I look forward to seeing that and seeing what Adrian's going to do with that as we move forward. And I know y'all are too. And thank you for supporting that. Keep up that work, because it's going to take money and it's going to take time for us to develop that out. So thank you for that. So a little better news than maybe somebody else might be fussing at you. But I want to thank you for supporting All in Red Week.
Thank you.
I'm sure Ted likes perfection. I got on red.
I wore my red last Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. The lady that was in here speaking before didn't. I'm confused. I'm not sure what she was talking about. Is that something that?
I think staff is probably aware of the situation and the requests. I think they're
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
all right. If no one else, Madam Clerk, any emails unrelated to cases? Okay. Let's see. With that, we'll move on to the next items. We have public hearings, rezoning, and conditional use requests. First, the first case is case 2118. a rezoning hearing, petition to rezone 1.46 acre tract located at 11098 NC Highway 50 North in Pleasant Grove Township from AR to general business. And Braston, are you going to give us the background
Yes,
on
sir,
that?
most certainly. Good evening, everyone. So case 21-18 involves a petition to rezone 1.46 acres located at 11098 NC Highway 50 North in Pleasant Grove Township from agriculture residential to general business. Applicant and owner is C.L. Bird. The existing zoning and land use is AR, and it's used for agriculture residential purposes. Surrounding zonings and land uses are AR and used for agriculture residential purposes, general business and community business, and used for various commercial uses. Traffic along NC 50 is 8,900 vehicles per day. This is a 2019 count. And this portion of NC 50 appears on our CTP as where comprehensive transportation plan is the existing boulevard needing improvement. Property is in a primary growth area in accordance with the county's current comprehensive plan. Once again, this is a straight rezoning, and it is a legislative action. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Newton? And at this time, we are to hear from the applicant.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is C.L. Bird. I'm from Garner. I bought this property approximately 6 months ago for rental purpose. And but there was so much commercial property right in that area, I decided to go ahead and see if I can get this on also. And that's the whole thing.
All right, any questions for Mr. Bird?
Mr. Bird, do you have any thoughts or plans of what type of commercial you think?
No, sir, just general business, I imagine. That'd be what I guess we'd go for.
Any other questions, Mr. Bird? All right, Mr. Bird, thank you.
Okay.
Is anyone else here to speak to this case? It looks not, so I will close the public discussion portion of the hearing and ask for Braston to come back up and summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Yes, sir. As for case 21-18, in the matter of rezoning property from agricultural residential to general business, planning board does recommend approval and offers for your consideration a statement of consistency.
All right, any final questions for our clarifications from Mr. Newton? If not, I will close the public hearing. And gentlemen, I will turn it over to you for your discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet and approve the rezoning request.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Case 21-18 has been approved, so. Moving on, case 21-21, which is a conditional zoning district hearing. And Braston, if you would give us a summary and update on that.
Yes, sir. Case 21-21 involves petition to rezone 7.83 acres located at 698 Church Road in Pleasant Grove Township from agriculture residential to general business conditional zoning district. Owner and applicant is Consolidated of North Carolina, LLC. The conditional zoning request is to allow for public, outdoor public storage, conditioned, unconditioned storage buildings, commercial flex, retail. Property is currently zoned agricultural residential, and there is a legacy mobile home park or manufactured home park on the property. Surrounding land uses, or zoning and land uses are agricultural, residential, and used for residential and agricultural purposes. General business, special use district, used for an auto sales lot, and community business, and this is used for a restaurant. In addition to one of those agricultural uses, adjoining agricultural uses, is a container plant nursery. Just wanted to make note of that. Once again, the traffic on Highway 50 in this area is 8,900 vehicles per day at a 2019 count, and this boulevard does, or this 50 does appear on our comprehensive transportation plan as a boulevard needing improvement, and the property is located in primary growth area in accordance with our current comprehensive plan. And as you can see, the applicant did submit a list of conditions to the property, and they'll be noted on page 18 of your agenda packet, I do believe.
Those 12
Yes, sir.
conditions, okay.
Be glad to answer any questions you may have. This is just north of the prior case you just heard. So Church Road kind of does a loop or a horseshoe off of NC 50 from the north, or from the south to the north, and this is just north of this property.
Any questions for Mr. Newton? If we could have the applicant come forward regarding their request.
Thank you. I'm David Manning. My brothers and I own Consolidated NC, and we do self-storage. And we also own the mobile home park currently. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Manning? And you do agree to the 12 conditions as they're currently
Yes.
presented? Okay. Well, if no other questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
And anyone else here to speak to this case? If you would come forward and state your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Andy Stevenson, Stevenson's Barbecue, which is a land joining of 11964 NC 50 North Willow Springs. First of all, I am not here to try to keep Mr. Manning from having as many storage. I do have concerns, and one, I do not even, I hadn't seen the conditions. I do have a question of what is commercial flex retail? What's the definition of that?
I would call on Mr. Newton if he had an answer for that.
Yes, sir. So essentially, commercial flex retail. Commercial flex retail is essentially anything that's listed in our general business community business divisions. So it could be anywhere from a boutique retail or convenience store. So that's what we generally categorize as commercial flex retail.
Okay, so I mean, our main concern, as you can see on, I've got a larger survey map here. This complete property line here is over 1,200 feet. Right here, Mr. Jones's trailer park, Mr. Roy Jones has had a trailer park for over, since I was a child, and there's trailers right here now, and this line right here, this is property that's adjoining and all this is growing area. All the way back, it's over 1,200 feet of nursery growing area. And there has been many studies of effects of plant growth to lighting. And I know they got specified dark sky lighting, and I don't know what happened during the original mini storage. And like I say, I'm not here to beat up on Mr. Manning today, but I do have a lighting problem now. The lights at the existing mini stores, he already has the units and it looks very nice. And he's got a nice fence around it and everything. And the lighting is really, really bright. And I cannot imagine the same lighting through this whole 1,200. At the present time, due to my daddy passing away and my brother Wayne that owned the nursery had just passed this past October, we've got some situations, and this irrigation in this ground in here is over 44 years old. The nursery started in 1978, and it will be growing area, and I'm just concerned about the lighting, and the lighting that's on the existing mini stores now is wall packs that's very bright. You know, this is what we're looking at now, and this is not even as bright. I've got it on my phone, a picture, and I live across the road. This is actually taken from my driveway, and I live across the road, and I have to keep my blinds closed now because lights are shining in my house, and it's pretty bad. And this map, I don't know if you got the map here, but this red zone, you know, is the mini storage property. And as you can see from here all the way around the yellow part, that's a 65-acre plant nursery. And all the water that comes from the mini storage feeds into our ponds. So that's the reason I'm asking about the flex retail. Wondering if it's pesticide, you know, oil recycling facility, you know, in the future. You know, we're not talking about what he'll do now. It'll be 50 years from now. I'm just concerned about water quality because this is a wet area where the mini storage is proposed. And I keep throwing questions, I know, but I'm wondering when I reckon I should have got out my little guideline of what I was going to talk about here. So I just want y'all to consider it being just like if it was y'all's house, 50 feet. You know, the lighting is my main issue, and also I would like to see if we could propose, there's a 15-foot buffer on the plan. Mr. Newton had told me that it's because it was commercial property here. There's 15 feet. This is just a survey from our land survey before this ever happened. But there's 15 feet landscape buffer on the mini stores from here to here. And that's because this property is zoned commercial, where the restaurant sits, and it goes along road frontage, and it has been growing area in the past. And there shows 30-foot buffer area on the back portion here. This is over, you know, 700 feet or more along here. He's got 30-foot buffer on the plan, and Mr. Newton had described to me that this was 15-foot landscape buffer between the mini storage and our property because of it was zoned commercial. And I would like to ask that we get 30-foot buffer all the way around, if possible, because the lighting and stuff and all, it's just really, it's just, I'm just concerned. I'm concerned about the effects of the lighting on the growth of our plants, and in studies from NC State and Oklahoma State, it has been proven that it changes the bloom cycles of plants and the pollination cycles of plants to have excessive outdoor lighting. And I just want to make sure that the lighting is dark sky and not what's on the existing mini storage now. Because this, if you allow me to show you this picture, just let me show you this picture right here. This is what we're looking at now.
It flipped on you.
Okay.
I think we can get,
And this is what it looks like from my front porch. And it's not, you can see the haze, and this is just from the existing mini storage, and it appears that there's a lot more units and all in proposed. And I just want to make sure that the lighting, I mean, in the conditions, I see it says dark sky lighting. I'm not sure if that was on the original plan for the mini storage, but, we had talked at the last meeting, you know, about the flex retail, and Mr. Manning didn't want to change that, you know. I just don't feel our community needs the next vape shop or, you know, even marijuana dispensary down the road, right where Dixon Road traffic comes out of the elementary school, and there where we are at the, it's just our family, my mama's side family and my dad's side family, we're both 100-year farms. And we've been farming, and Stevenson's Barbecue was started because the hog prices crashed, and Daddy started cooking hogs instead of selling hogs. And the nursery started because we had a big pile of ketchup cans, and Daddy had a worm bed that he used to grow fishing worms. He's just trying to make ends meet and sell fish bait, and he started sticking azalea cuttings that Mr. Lee down at Lee and Sons Nursery let him get cuttings off some azaleas down there. And next thing I knew, after I got off the school bus potting plants every afternoon, we had 10,000 1-gallon azaleas, and it turned into a 65-acre nursery. And we just want to tend to our business. And, you know, I'm not trying to tend to Mr. Manning's business. I just, you know, I already regret not coming to the meeting before on the lighting situation we've got. I mean, I can read a newspaper in my backyard now, and I live in the woods. And that's my only concerns, and just the water quality thing is it's crucial, because probably 50% of the water that comes into our irrigation ponds we've got, and the reason I'm talking about nursery because my brother has left me sole trustee of the nursery. His daughters are inherited in the nursery, but I have full trustee in the nursery and call all the shots, and I just try and look after the girls and the future of the nursery. And I just, mini storage one day and whatever flex retail is next day. I just don't know. Down the road, you know, we do not need contaminants coming. You know, we have to watch what we're doing on our side. And, you know, we've got $7 million worth of nursery stock over there at any given time. And I just didn't want to not show up for the meeting again, because I wish there was something we could do about the lighting, and I just don't want it to happen again.
I had a question for council. So if we have questions or clarifications for Mr. Newton now, can we ask those now? So,
Can I ask just a
sure. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ms. Stevenson, if you look at condition number 3, if you could put it
Yes, sir.
back on the board there, Damon. All right, condition number 3, which is states lighting shall be engineered dark sky down lighting so not to shine onto adjacent properties. Are you okay with that language?
Oh, yes, sir. One recommendation, the whole back side of the mini storage, I don't expect him not to put any lights, but I see these lights that are shining, it was on that picture, are on the back of the unit of the thing, and if on our side, what's on the property line, you know, and see, these got outdoor storage too, which then I think you have lights on poles. And even like at the car lot that's over at the nursery that was put in by my brother's son-in-law, you know, he's got lights, and we kind of specified he not have bright lights, and they got the down lights like you got in parking lots and all. And I just, yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, just the minimum amount of lighters we could get, because this property line is only 50 feet. There's a path, there's probably 20 feet of path and then growing area for the nursery. And on the back corner back there, as you can see in the picture that you had up earlier, you can see the greenhouses and stuff back there, and some plants are very susceptible to light.
Mr. Newton, is this something that will be when the final plans are submitted, that you will review to make sure they comply with the downlighting and dark sky condition?
Yes, sir. There we go. Yes, sir, it will. So if this rezoning is approved, they will submit a full set of construction drawings, site development drawings. We will review those. We will make sure that they do have an engineered lighting plan, so we can ensure that their lighting will stay on, or their
All right, any other questions for
Yeah.
Mr. Stevenson?
I got one for Braxton. Okay. Followed up on his flex office question. And/or retail facilities, is this in addition to what he wants to do currently at the storage, or?
It is accessory to, I believe it is accessory to the storage. However, I maybe ask that you ask Mr. Manning or the applicant that, so he can give a little more
Okay,
clarity to that
yeah.
situation.
I'm sure the chairman going to let us talk about these conditions with the applicant shortly.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Braxton, didn't we rezone property just north of this a couple of years ago? Was it in conjunction with the nursery? Where there's a...
There was a parcel, I think the special use was amended.
Okay,
I believe that was it.
yeah. To add an automotive repair or something?
It was automotive repair,
right.
yes, sir, as an accessory to their
Retail.
automotive sales.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question. It seems to me, when you look at the needs on both properties, I know Stevenson's Barbecue and I'm familiar with them. And it seems like to me to go from a 15-foot buffer to a 30-foot buffer would not be unduly burdensome in this case. And so I'm going to make a motion that we make a requirement that there be a 30-foot buffer.
All right, let me get some direction from council on this. So is this the time when we're talking with the applicant about modifying or adding conditions?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Does that need to be in the form of a motion, or is that a question to the applicant first?
Whichever way the board prefers. I mean, certainly the applicant has to agree to the condition. If the applicant doesn't agree to the condition, certainly that's something that you take into consideration as you're considering whether or not this is the right fit for this particular area. But to impose any condition in a conditional zoning would have to be agreed upon by the applicant.
So we do have a motion.
Well, I would think we'd take that into consideration because there may be some other things that we might
Okay.
want to modify as
think-
well.
Well, maybe is it proper to ask the applicant whether he would agree to a 30-foot buffer? Then I'd like to do that at this
Okay.
time.
I would prefer if you would come up to the microphone, please.
I don't think that's fair to us, because when we bought the property, you know, the county has rules of how you develop commercial property next to other commercial property, and nobody else is being asked to do that except us. I don't think that's fair to us. And it does put a big burden on us. I mean, if you take all of our property and you add 15 more feet to all that, we lose a lot of property that's valuable to us.
Don't you think the lighting that you have for the type of use you're having it versus the use that Stevenson's is using with their property, they're totally different uses. And that's what conditional zoning is about.
Right. I mean, I think that, you know, we really do need some, the lighting, because otherwise we're just encouraging crime.
I understand that. I understand you need it. These folks over here also need to be able to have their needs met. Is there any compromise that you'd be willing to do to?
Well, I mean, I would have to speak to my partners really, and I don't really want to delay. But I mean, if, I don't think it's fair to us to change the rules after we bought the property and we make our, I'm just saying.
On conditional zoning, there,
Well, I mean,
any rules applies. What's in the best interest, under the new laws, what's in the best interest of the county, what's in the best interest of the whole neighborhood, all that comes in to be, and there are no,
but see, our competition, which is right across the street, is closer to his house, is going to be all outdoor parking, and that's already been approved, I understand. And they're not going to have that restriction on their profitability, and they're not going to have to carry a 30-foot buffer on theirs. They're going to have a 15-foot buffer, and they're going to be closer to his house than we are. So I don't really see that it's, again, I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it even makes sense, because again, right across from Church Road, where we're going to have our storage, it's already approved, from what I understand, for outdoor storage, and that's going to have its own lighting. And again, that is a competitor to us, and we're trying to make a living, and unless they're required to do a 30-foot buffer against all the commercial around them.
well, I'm not familiar with the case you're talking about. I'm just familiar with the case that's in front of us tonight.
Okay. I'm just saying it does put a big burden on us, I think.
How long have you owned the property?
I wish I had a better answer. Probably 3 years, I think. We added to our current property that we've had for 20 years.
And it was AR when you bought it?
Correct. But again, I mean, if it was asked of us that maybe the new outdoor storage across the street, if they have to abide by that, and then if all of their acreage has to abide by 30-foot buffer going forward, that would be fair to everybody then. But it still does, I don't think it is anyone's best interest, but that could
What will be between the storage buildings on the ground? Gravel pavement or what?
Oh, no, we do pavement.
Okay.
Gravel is just for outdoor storage, and that's just temporary.
But it would be impermeable surface?
Correct.
Okay.
And any water that we are shedding off is improved because we go into retention pond. And before we did anything with this mobile home park, it just would send what it's going to send. There was no retention pond. So we have retention pond now that should help our quality of water. But again, I'm just saying if the burden is put on us, it seems to me it would be fair to put on the new business that's going to do that. And then the Stevensons, they could have 30-foot buffer on all their property too. That wouldn't be, I don't think, too much to ask if we're going to be asked that.
So I did have one clarification, Mr. Newton. The Class B is the 15-foot wide buffer?
The Class B is, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now,
And then-
the site plan shows, if you'll notice, I think the site plan shows a 30-foot buffer. So there is a 30-foot buffer wherever it adjoins an AR. So the 15 has to be, the 15 would be along where it adjoins that community business, because commercial zoning districts. So the intensity is similar, but not exactly the same, so that's why the buffer's reduced. The 30-foot buffer is required because it is an AR, which the intensities are much different.
So, and I just wanted to make sure the length of the property, the adjoining property line that we're talking about between this case and the Stevenson Farm nursery, is that 750 feet? Is that what I heard? And I think I just quickly measured that on GIS. Does that sound sound right on that northern boundary?
It sounds fairly accurate.
Yeah, because if I'm
It-
looking at that and we're talking an extra 15 feet, that's, and my math may be off, but that's about a quarter of an acre difference. If you're limited to that one common property line.
Yeah, I think where the increase in buffer comes to play is actually the property. It would be the westerly line. That would adjoin with the Stevenson's barbecue. If you're looking at the site plan, I apologize for that microphone. So if you look at the site plan, there's a 15-foot buffer nearest, on the portion nearest NC 50. Everything else is indicating a 30-foot buffer.
Okay. So it's even less than 750 feet?
It is,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay.
I just don't understand why that 30-foot buffer should not continue on to Highway 50.
I mean, isn't it the case that all the commercial that are next to other commercial, they're 15-foot buffers? For everyone that's commercial. I mean, if it was residential, then we'd automatically assume it's going to be the wide buffer like we have in the back with the residential.
For my one vote, I cannot vote to approve this without that buffer.
Well, again, the only thing I would like to mention is if we do that, I think it is fair that we do that we apply that to the others. That's only fair.
That's fine.
I mean, I think Mr. Stevenson could agree that all his property, we do a 30-foot buffer on all that. And then this new, when they go to get approval for the new outdoor storage, they're going to be directly competing with us. They should be asked the same thing, as 30-foot on any commercial. I think that'd be fair. It's not fair to us to have everybody else say, okay, we get, 15-foot everywhere in the entire county except us. I don't think that's fair.
Braxton, is that common, I understood when your comment, is that common practice in regard to commercial buffer?
So in this situation, what you have is a higher intensity commercial adjoining a slightly lesser intense commercial. And as our ordinance read, there is a buffer required, and that buffer is 15 feet. So with regard to the AR, that agricultural residential, and that general business zoning, that requires a 30-foot wide buffer on the commercial side, because that's the more intense.
So that's the policy we've been sticking with?
That is actually in our ordinance, yes, sir.
But Braxton, that's normally when you have commercials building versus building. Here, what's commercial is really agricultural in that they're raising plants and have a nursery there.
That is correct, however, it's classified as.
I understand what it's classified.
That activity is a farm exempt activity.
But it is a farming activity.
It's also a restaurant, so the area we're talking, the restaurant's there too. I hope you all don't, I'm not trying to be difficult, it's just that when I leave, if I don't make my best case for my brothers and everybody, they're gonna be like, what'd you do? And like Mr. Lauder said, it adds up and it hurts us. So I gotta make my best case for that. And all I'm asking is that it's fair. And if we do want to apply that, then all I'd ask is we apply it to everybody around us, because it doesn't seem fair to just put that burden on us.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions. And Council, I want to direct these sort of to help me understand that what we're doing. So we've got property that's zoned agricultural, residential.
Correct.
And you've purchased it as that. And you've come to us to rezone this to general business conditional zoning. The conditional portion of that allows us to put conditions on that rezoning based on the neighborhood, the area, the way it affects the neighbor. And those conditions could be different in different parts of the county based on the surroundings of that rezoned property. Is that correct?
That is correct. And do keep in mind that with regards to conditional zoning, those conditions have to be agreed upon.
Right.
If they are not agreed upon, one of the factors that you can utilize for your determination is whether or not this proposed use is in the public interest, because that is one of the factors that you are required to contemplate. Of course, the first factor is whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. So those are the two things that you're looking at when you're evaluating a request that comes before you. And just wanted to point out that the request before you is for this particular property. It would not be appropriate for us to make any kind of determinations with regards to any other piece of property that is not appropriately before you tonight.
That was going to be my next question.
Jennifer, it's my understanding that as we sit at this board tonight, we're a legislative body. We're
Yes,
not
sir.
a judicial body.
That is correct.
We used to be a judicial body, and we had to apply the law as it was written. As a legislative body, we do not have to apply the law as written. We can look at what's best for the county, what's best for all the people involved, and we can put the conditions that we believe, that legislatively we believe is in the best interest for all concerned.
That is 99% correct. I would want to clarify that any conditions that you set have to be agreed upon by the applicant.
I understand
If the
that.
applicant does not agree, then you could
Then-
determine that it's not in the public
That's
interest.
right. Then
Yes,
we
sir.
can vote against. That's what I told him. And I think in this legislative body, as we look at this, when you look at the merits on both sides, I believe to ask this applicant to give another 15 foot, which he still owns and can still have shrubs or whatever, is fair for Mr. Stevenson. That family's been in business for close to 100 years. Been in the barbecue business, been in the nursery business, and for this to come and affect their business, I don't believe is in the best interest of the community.
So could I get one more clarification, Mr. Newton? Is there any way you could go to a screen and show us where the 30-foot buffer is and where the 15-foot is? Because I just want to make sure the western boundary is, I think, about 400 feet, so it's even.
But it's a 30-foot buffer all the way
Okay.
around,
I was looking on my screen, sorry.
except just for that one little sliver.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
So if you'll follow the screen where the icon is, you'll see this is the 15 foot, so that would be the westerly. That is NC 50 off to just to the left of the one there.
It's important to note also, to the left of that is a restaurant, not the nursery.
Okay.
It's real important if that's what we're arguing.
Okay, so that's, I mean, just, again, that's, I think, 1,500ths of an acre we're talking about on there, so. That's, I don't know that we're really getting anywhere other than the 15 feet. It sounds like your position is you want to stick with the 15 feet.
No, I mean, again,
You know, I got to tend to agree with the applicant in that it's in our ordinance as it pertains to what we've done in the past, and certainly, even though it is legislative, I think we'll be making an exception to a rule that we hadn't required before. That's just my one opinion.
So that was my point of clarification with the counselor, is that these conditions can be different at different parts of the county based on the surroundings. It just happens to be a barbecue restaurant and a nursery. It could be a school and a nursery. I mean, it could be anything. So the conditions are going to be based on what's surrounding it. So if we feel like if this is in the best interest of that neighborhood, that area, based on what is surrounding, then so be it. If not, then it could be something different. I don't think we're breaking any type of
Well,
rule.
I'm not saying anything, but traditionally, the commercial requires the 15-foot buffer, even though it is a nursery, and I understand the reason why, but it's still commercial to commercial, any way you cut it.
We're not bound by that anymore.
This
No, I'm
thing,
not saying you're bound by it, I'm just saying that, I'm just simply saying, me make that length is a little bit too long for me. It's just my one person.
let me ask, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
may.
sir.
This third one, sky downlighting so as not to shine onto adjacent properties. We've seen that a lot. And I dare say in every case, it's violated. There's probably light shining off that property. It may be that in order to comply with that, it may have to be 30 feet or should be 30 feet. What would happen, Mr. Newton, if it fails to comply with that? If in fact, I mean, many people might just let it go, but if you were growing plants need darkness, if someone raised the issue, what would remedy if number 3 were violated?
So there's a due process, obviously. We would send a notice of violation. One, we'd have to determine if there is cause for that notice of violation. Right. If that is the action that was rendering some kind of detriment to the adjoining property. Once that's done, we would send them a notice of violation, give them a period of time to comply. If they did not comply, and then we would seek other remedies in order to get them into compliance. Once again, although this is legislative, they are bound by these conditions.
Right.
So, and they agree to these conditions.
I mean, clearly, we understand Mr. Stevenson's concerns, and we don't just overlook that. In fact, we definitely want to address that, and we want to make sure everyone's happy, meaning our neighbors around us are happy that we're there, the community's happy that we're there. They're not going to be happy with us if we don't comply with the lighting. And I know right now we probably aren't doing as good a job as we can on the lighting if it's affecting, and we're going to look into that. And it's been a while, and honestly, I've asked someone to look at that and put some shields on that for me, and that sounds pie in the sky, but right now getting contractors is not easy. And little jobs like that is not easy to get out there. But we want to make sure that we address the happiness of our people around us. So we want to do a good job. We've never heard any complaints from any of the residential around us or anyone. We get compliments all the time that we've improved the area a lot. And our goal is to make it a very much improved area. So we would definitely, go by the guidelines that are set for us. And again, my only thing is I've got 2 other brothers and another partner, and if I come back and say, I just didn't even fight it, they'd be like, well, why didn't you at least fight it? And they'd have all the reasons because they're relaxed for the next day.
So is it a possibility you want to table this until you have a chance to talk to your partners?
Can I ask you a question?
Can you let him answer that one first?
I'd rather not do that.
Okay, all right, I just
Because
want to give you that
I
option.
really want to kind of move on what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So, just a point of order, are we all hung up over 30 feet, or am I the only one, or what?
Well, what I was going to do is see if there's anybody else who wanted to speak, close the public discussion. We'll have our discussion, and we'll find out if 30 foot is the rule. If it is, then we can ask Mr. Manning if he agrees to it or not. If he doesn't, then we'll take our vote based on that.
As I understand it, we're trying to negotiate with the applicant. If we can't agree, and he goes down, we close it, then we would turn down the zoning if we couldn't get that, correct?
You could. And so keep in mind that your 2 standards are consistency with the comprehensive plan and not in the public interest. And so I would ask that if that is the direction that the board decided that they wanted to go, is that you state the basis for inconsistency with the comprehensive plan and why it's not in the public interest. And as you have seen in other cases, inconsistency with the comprehensive plan can sometimes include things such as incompatible uses, inharmonious uses, preservation of agricultural activities. Those are the kinds of things that typically you find when things are not consistent with the comprehensive plan.
And not in the best interest of it.
And not in public interest, yes, sir.
Which is what we would,
Your 2 standards, yes, sir.
that's right.
And with that said, all I would ask if that was the case, because you would force my hand at that point, I would have to agree to that. But I would ask, as seriously, that that be applied fairly to the 50-foot. From my property to this next outdoor storage is going to be 50 feet. So they should have to abide by the same burden as I do, because they're surrounded by commercial. So their entire property should have to be a 30-foot buffer, in fairness. And in fairness, Mr. Stevenson's property should then be encumbered by a 30-foot buffer requirement. In fairness, I mean, it's only fair.
Yeah, and I think as council said, we can't consider other cases that aren't even here. I understand. So if with kind of being stuck, is there anyone else that has anything to bring forward on this case before we close the public discussion?
I would like to make one more statement, please.
Yes, sir. If you could make it brief.
Can I do it right here?
Hey, come on up.
Hey, look, just,
We want to hear you.
The distance is 407 feet there on that thing. The only reason I'm requesting that is it is a growing area. There's irrigation in the ground. The sprinklers are not showing now because we cut them off because we got to redo it. But that is a growing area, and the reason it is on restaurant property, but it's 100 yards from the restaurant. It was just continued down the highway frontage to 50. My daddy just drew it that way and zoned it commercial. But there has been, that is actually where the nursery began. That is the original nursery site and the first irrigation we ever put in there. And across the road where he's talking about on the mini stores, the other mini stores, that 15 foot on the commercial side is a pipe slice out on the road, and it is commercial, and it's not. I mean, this is an agricultural, horticultural growing area, and I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to close the public discussion and call for Braston to summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Yes, sir. As it relates to case 21-21, planning board does recommend approval and submits for your consideration those conditions that were agreed upon with the applicant.
And one other clarification for me, Mr. Stevenson had brought up issues of stormwater runoff, but that also will be, when the complete design plans are submitted, that would be reviewed.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. All right, any
Mr.
other?
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think both their comments and positions have merit. But to me, the proof's in the pudding. If we put a 100-foot buffer and still shines light over there, it's going to be a problem. If we put a 5-foot buffer and the light is controlled, that's not a problem. So I think the remedy is how it's controlled. I think Mr. Braswell makes a good point that we've not done this in the past, and we ought to be consistent. But I think we ought to probably follow that consistency, but put teeth in those requirements. In other words, if he disrupts Mr. Stevenson's operation because of this lighting, then something's got to happen.
Ted, the legal costs and the impracticality of doing that, I can tell you, is
Well, it would be our folks making inspections.
they're not in the business of doing that. I think this is, the Stevens are using their property for basically agricultural use. And we say we want to preserve agricultural use. And to ask this storage facility to get 15 feet up to preserve the agriculture use, to me, it's in the best interest of our community. And if the legislature, they pass this law so commissioners were not bound by rules, that they can do and use judgment, do what was in the best interest on a case-by-case basis.
Is the buffer all because of lighting? Is that where we're at? Is that reason, Commissioner, you say the buffer because of the lighting?
So the buffer is a requirement. The buffer
is a requirement, but expanded buffer.
Yeah, so the buffer, from our perspective, a buffer is prescribed and is prescribed for visual purposes. However, in this case, I'll let Mr.
If the neighbor was growing corn or soybeans, that buffer'd have to be 30 feet. right?
Yes, sir.
And here we're just growing plants and nursery, both of which are agricultural processes, and both of which need light and space and things like that. And that's why what we're asking this applicant to agree on, when you look, it's 30 feet all the way around his property, except for just this sliver here. And to ask him to continue that 30-foot buffer, to me, is a minimal burden.
I go with you.
I think the applicant certainly has a right to do with their property what they'd like to do, but it should not come at a cost that adds undue burden on Mr. Stevenson back there. So I think what we're trying to do is find a compromise that's going to work for both individuals, and I would agree with Mr. Smith on that compromise as well.
Can I speak one more time?
We've already closed public discussion. So if I'm hearing 30 foot, at least has 3 votes, so we make that a condition. I don't know what buffer that is, Bradson, if that's a class.
I think we, if he wants to agree to that, I think we ought to give him the chance to do that so we can, I want to approve his plan. I'd like to approve his plan. I don't want to not approve his plan, but I don't want to approve it with a 15-foot buffer.
Right. Well, what I'm saying, if there's 3 up here who are for, then that's the majority, so that would be the condition, was 30 feet before then we ask him to agree. So that's kind of the logic I was following. So it sounds like we do have, and do we need to make a motion on the changing the condition, or do we just, since we have majority?
I think since you've got a consensus, when you do your final motion, if the applicant agrees, and you do the final motion, then I would include that change as part of your final motion with the conditions.
And so just, Commissioner Smith, we're talking a 30-foot width with the same number of plantings, no doubling up of the plantings, just the buffer with the same requirements for the Class B buffer. Is that what we're talking about? Just widen it?
Well, I don't want to get into Class B or anything like that. I want to just say the condition on the use of this property is that the 30-foot buffer that's on all the property would also be on the where it joins the Stevenson.
Yeah, so the Class C, which would essentially,
Would be Class
30-foot
C.
buffer would be a Class C,
Okay,
which is
okay. So that's
slightly
easy enough.
more dense in plantings, but not extremely. I mean, along 400 feet, you may be adding 3 to 4 plants per 100 feet. So in this situation, if you said worst case scenario, 4 plants per 100 feet, and that's 400 foot, you're looking at 16 additional plants along with the width.
Okay. So it sounds like we are looking at adding and changing, modifying the condition 3, was it, no, not 3?
No, it's 12.
12?
I think it's
Yeah, I flipped pages, so.
I think it's 6.
6, okay, we'll go with 6, to be from Class B to Class C, which includes
One of
the
them.
30-foot. Okay. And so I guess we need to get Mr. Manning back to see if he would agree to that change or not.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just want to ask if everybody thinks that the people that are going to be putting in the storage across the street from me have an advantage over me, cost advantage and ability to make money over me, because they are, unless they're, and I think the only fair thing would be is to ask them to have a 30-foot buffer. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Not relevant.
Mr. Manning,
It's not relevant
you're
to this
asking something
discussion.
we can't do. We can't.
No, well, you're going to be, that's going to be coming in front of you, right?
Well,
Well, we'll consider it at that
Okay,
time, yes.
okay.
For this,
And that's all I
well,
ask, is for you all to acknowledge that we're in a competitive environment, and that for whatever reason, that's going to help them over us and their profitability, sustainability. So I just want to point that out as well.
Okay.
And I think y'all do a great job. I hate that I took so much of your time. You do a great job for our county. I'm not trying in any way to be, difficult. It's just I know what it's going to be like when I go back to my brothers. Y'all probably have brothers too. To go back to. So it's just, it's going to be a burden for us, and unfortunate. And I just, again, we'll probably be the only ones having to carry that. I hope not, but I hope our competitor We'll have to as well.
So the question still is, do you agree to that change in condition to a Class C buffer along that additional?
Well,
407 feet.
unfortunately, I think I have to agree with that, so I will.
Okay. All right. And I would now close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for a motion and a vote.
I make a motion that we approve this with the change to the 30-foot buffer.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. All
I
in
guess
favor?
that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I guess that motion includes adopt the statement of consistency resolution.
I think it probably does, yeah, thank you
Okay.
for looking at that piece of paper. So we have a motion and a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. All right. Thank you, everyone, for enduring all that. Let's see where we are here.
Should be 20,
I got so many
22.
pieces of paper laid out here.
22.
2122.
All right, case 2122, Braston,
Yes, sir.
try this again.
Absolutely. This is straight rezoning, so no condition. This is a petition to rezone 2.05 acres located at 11138 Cleveland Road in the Cleveland Township from agricultural residential to general business. Owner is Bobby and Peggy Creech, applicant is Jana Brown. Property is currently zoned agricultural residential use for residential purposes, and the surrounding land uses are agricultural residential, is zoned agricultural residential and used for such purposes. And immediately across Cleveland Road, across the right-of-way, there's a multitude of properties on general business and used for various type purposes, dance studio, auto repair shop, and the like. Traffic along Cleveland Road is 16,000 vehicles per day, and Cleveland Road does appear on our CTP as an existing or a boulevard needing improvement. And this is in a primary growth area. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, I would ask the applicant to come forward. Any comments?
And I'm Jana Brown. I live at 602 Balmoral Street, Clayton. Pardon my voice. I had sinus surgery on Thursday, so I'm still real congested. But yeah, I'd just like to rezone this to general business. I've lived on Cleveland Road mostly all my life for 44 years, and I'd like to try to open a homemade ice cream shop here. So that's it, I guess.
Would you agree to a condition to bring us some ice cream?
Great.
Let's vote on our favorite
There we go,
flavor.
there we go. Yes, yes. Sounds reasonable to me.
Talk about ethics trading.
Yeah, no bribery.
Well, thank you, Ms. Brown. Is there anyone else here to have any comments on this case? All right, you've been seated. If not, I will close the public discussion and ask Braston to come forward again to summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Sir, as it relates to case 21-22, the rezoning of said property from agricultural residential to general business, the planning board does recommend approval and offers a statement of consistency for your consideration.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Newton? All right, if not, I'll close the public hearing. And any other discussion by the board?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do have one question for Braston. Any changes to the highway configuration out there required of this?
That'll be determined with the driveway permit application by DOT once that's done, and that'll come when they go to actually develop the property. There will be a site plan that'll have to be submitted, and DOT will review that time.
Okay. Isn't it 3 lanes out there now?
A stretch of it, most of it is going to be 3 lanes because of the dance art studio, that Dance Art Drive, that area. There is a 3-lane turn lane there.
Right, okay.
All right. What is the pleasure of the board?
Straight rezoning.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet and approve the rezoning request for case number 2122.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is case 2123, and before we get started on that, I need to ask to be recused. My employer is the engineer of record on this project, and I would ask, for that reason, I would ask to be recused and turn the meeting over to Vice Chairman Harris. Any objections to that? No. All right, thank you. I'll step next door.
Next item on the agenda is case 2123. It's open conditional, I'll open the conditional zoning district hearing. Petition to rezone 20.1 acres located at 6100 NC Highway 42 in the Cleveland Township for agricultural residential to industrial 2 conditional zoning district I2CZ. This time I'll ask our planning director, Braston Newton, to present the case.
Yes, sir. The owner of the property is Patricia Ann Johnston, Maynard and Paulette Johnston Slayton. Applicant is Merit Acquisitions, LLC, represented by Mr. Nathan Robb. The conditional zoning request is limited heavy industrial, and that essentially limiting the uses within that heavy industrial classification. The existing zoning is AR, and it is currently vacant, void of any particular use at the moment. The adjoining properties, there is some general business special use district rezoning. This is an auto part sales. This is a chain or a national brand auto part sales. General business, restaurant, law office, kennel, auto part store, and the like. Traffic along NC 42 in this area is 19,500 vehicles per day. This is a 2019 count. NC 42 in this area, this is a funded project which will be widened to a 4-lane divided highway, and construction to begin in 2029 as per the most recent information on NCDOT's website. This property is in the primary growth areas as indicated in the county's comprehensive land use plan. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Newton, the board? Seeing none, we'll ask to hear from the applicant or his or her representative. Please state your name and area of location of residence, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Nathan Robb. I reside at 2114 East Main Street in Durham, North Carolina. Appreciate everyone's time this evening, and I work for Merit Properties. Although we might be new to the area, we've been around since about 2018 in this region. In 1967 goes back to our roots when our late founder, Leroy Merritt, started our company. It's a 55-year tradition, really a construction company. Leroy was a block mason, and it's got its roots in construction and turned into a development company. We've built over 19 million square feet since then. We've completed our first project in Durham last year. We have 2 other projects in the area underway in Wake Forest and Knightdale. We have over 2,000 customers in our portfolio. On average, they're about 6,000 square feet each. They really cater to rooftops, to service industries, plumbers, HVAC, lawn care, pool care type people, engineers, labs, and so forth. This development here that we're contemplating really goes back to our roots that Leroy started in 1967. It's just building a light industrial flex warehouse space for people to open up their business and be able to serve the community. We have about 180,000 square feet of that, and another 30,000 square feet of what we call kind of incubator buildings, some smaller move-in ready places for people, to set up shop. We estimate could be 300 to 400 part-time jobs for construction and up to 400 full-time jobs after occupancy. This will be about a $40 million investment for us. And as you can see, I think if you advance through here, you can go back to one slide with the uses. So for us, We own these buildings for life. We still have the first building that Leroy built in 1967 with his own hands. We care about the way they look. We like to limit the uses to be light uses. We're not very heavy traffic, not very heavy truck users. We like to care and maintain our buildings. You'll see they're brick on all four sides if you want to advance to, there you go. This is an example of our building in Durham. Currently, it's brick on all four sides, well landscaped, and it's maintained in-house. That's generally it, unless you all have any questions for me.
Any questions of the board for the applicant? This time I asked the staff to put the list of conditions up on the screen. Have you had an opportunity to review these conditions?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with all the conditions?
100%.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is anyone here to speak for or against this project? That would be the time to come forward.
I'm Wayne Luter Jr., and this is my mother Diane. We own the property on the right of it.
Okay.
And
Come
my
right
question
on
would
up
be-
there to the microphone, Mr. Luter. Yes, sir. There you go. You're good. You're good.
My question would be, is there any way that we could narrow down the scope? I mean, I saw some kind of cotton gin a while ago, or heavy equipment, or, a rock quarry. I mean, when will, or how will we know what they're actually going to put there? Or just going to let them put anything in this heavy, this particular zone? I mean, it's wide open.
So I think what Mr. Luter is alluding to, if you look at condition number 1, this is actually uses that are being proposed by the applicant to be eliminated from those lists of allowable uses within this particular district. So the rock quarry would not be an allowed use, a cotton gin or any such facility would not be allowed as well, to also include airport, asphalt plant, carnival, circus, coal or wood, fuel yards, pole treating plants, concrete plant manufacturing, extraction of earth products, which is your rock quarry or mining operations as well, fertilizer manufacturing, junkyard, salvage yard, trucking terminals, transfer companies, or wholesale gasoline storage facilities. These are all eliminated from, would be eliminated from allowable uses.
So, Mr. Luter, they've reduced the scope. Does that help answer your question?
How can I get this information here? Is it all available to the county, or, any citizen?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
Can by seeing that there'll be some, probably sound like there may
Get
be
it right now.
like a strip center.
This is what's being eliminated.
We've been there, just like the Stevenson fellow earlier, we've been there for over 50 years. And we've seen it, come and go or whatever, but just like last night, there was 5 deputies in front of our house. And another car wreck, it's right where you come down that new veterinary office there. And I'm, just have some kind of a, concern about what may possibly go next door. And it sounds like there may be, it's like a strip center where there'll be some prefab buildings for whoever to move in, I think, different type of businesses.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Luter?
No.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for or against this project? All right, seeing none, I will close that portion of the hearing. Mr. Newton, if you would come back and summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Yes, sir, as it relates to case 21-23, planning board does recommend approval with the proposed conditions as presented and offers for your consideration a statement of consistency.
Gentlemen, any questions for Mr. Newton?
No.
All right. This time with the wishes of the board.
Mr. Chairman, there's not many of us left, so. We're still here.
You want to do it, Tony, or you want
Sure,
me?
I'm gonna make a motion, okay? I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda package and approve the rezoning request with the conditions as discussed for case 21-23.
I second.
All right, have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen, your project's been approved. Now I'll ask Mr. Chairman Lauder to come back in and take over the meeting. Thank you.
I think maybe I'll let you handle all those going forward.
Much quicker. His didn't last as long as yours.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. So let me get back situated here for a second. The next up is case 2124, a conditional zoning district hearing. Braxton, if you would give us some background and
Yes, sir. This case is petition to rezone 4 acres located at 16810 Buffalo Road in Watkins Township from agricultural residential to general business conditional zoning district. The owner is Bobby Taylor, applicant is Stephen Allen. Conditional zoning request would be to allow for parking and storage facility, obviously with some noted conditions. The property is currently zoned agricultural residential used for such purposes. The surrounding land uses or surrounding zoning and land uses are agricultural residential and used for the same. Buffalo Road has about 8,100 vehicles per day. At this point, that's a 2019 count. And Buffalo Road does appear on our comprehensive transportation plan as a boulevard needing improvement. This is in a primary growth area as noted in our comprehensive plan, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Is the locations of any other businesses around that particular?
Not immediately
property?
adjacent. The closest business would be just to the south at the intersection of Maggie Way and Buffalo Road. And the property actually would primarily own Maggie Way, if not entirely. And that is a legacy special use district and that's a plumbing contract.
any other questions?
There are almost no businesses in this area.
Yeah.
I thought it was primary
Clyde's
residential.
Chapel.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Newton? If not, I'd ask the applicant to come forward and state their case.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
Yes.
I thought you said something to me.
No, I'll just ask you to state your case.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, my name's Tim Griffin. I live in Knightdale, real close to this area. I don't know that at this point there is any more businesses other than there's a church across the street. There's a highway patrol tower, radio tower, I guess, almost directly across the street. And I know that there's 50-plus acres across the street that's about to be turned into a residential district as well. So other than that, that's pretty much it as far as the businesses and whatnot. I do know that the zoning isn't what we need it to be right now. I think that the neighborhood needs this as a new neighborhood on Maggie Road. They're building it now as we speak. It's under construction, and I just feel like it's a good thing for the neighborhood. Sure do.
All right. And I think right now there's 13 proposed conditions. Are those acceptable to you?
They are. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak for or against this case? Who would step? Please state your name and address.
Herbert Case, 16750 Buffalo Road, Wendell. My property, if you look on the map, it's just to the south of this. It's adjoining. My daughter, who's with me, lives in the house adjacent to it. This proposed storage facility, and I don't know why we're having so many storage facilities being built, it's not a good location. Right now, it's agricultural. Taylor's got some nice Angus cows out there that Mr. Smith might be jealous of, but it is agriculture. I am a, say, part-time farmer. I've got horses, goats, pigs, that sort of thing. Starting my chickens, they're doing real. Like I said, this is not a place for metal buildings, chain link fence, and outside lighting. Traffic on Buffalo Road is terrible. This will add to the congestion. Being right in the middle of the straightaway, which everybody thinks is a speedway, I can see accidents happening. Storage like this, you'll be pulling trailers in and out, and it's an accident waiting to happen. Storage facility in itself, I hate to say it, you never know what's going to be in there. If you look on the map, this is just a few feet from my daughter's house and her bedroom. The drive comes in right beside their house to this facility. People will be coming in 24/7. Don't know who they are. Don't know what they're doing. I've seen all kinds of things happen in storage facilities. Sometimes they are not just for storage. They end up being workshops, offices, and garage band gatherings. You don't know what's there. I do know that people put in storage facilities stuff they don't want to put in their house. It's not safe. You've spoken already about lighting. There is no such thing as a dark sky. I work with an engineering firm that designs lighting. I go out on job sites to assess lighting. I know what it is. Instead of a dark sky now, I don't care how many lights you put out there or how low they are, unless they're about 2 foot off the ground, you're going to get effects from it. Keep in mind, this is just a few feet from my daughter's house. And I live on the other side of her, and I actually own the property, the house on the other side of me. So we're right there together. I understand Mr. Taylor wants to profit from his land. I don't fault him for that. But having a mini storage facility is not the way to do it. I would not think. Also, when this thing gets changed to zoning, it could change from once it's changed, it could go from mini storage to a Dollar General or a Sheetz or anything else that's allowed under that section of zoning. So you see what's happening there. What may start off as a mini storage could be the next Dollar General, the gas station, or whatever. Increasing the traffic, increasing quality. We'd have increased traffic, noise, trash. Because you know as well as I do, if it ain't your place, people don't take care of it. I've got animals right across the fence. And I already know from the plumbing place on the other side, Mr. Carnell, there's at times I have to go clean the trash up out of my pasture. So that's another impact. This area of the county, this area, this part of the road, a couple of years ago, someone else came up wanting to start a business right across the road from here, and it was denied because it was not consistent with the growth in that area. There are 10 mini storage facilities already within 5 miles of this location. There's another one that's about to be built over there on 42 at Thanksgiving, just a few miles away. So I don't see the need for another mini storage in this place as well. We've got plenty of them around. If you go 15 miles, you'll find another 10 storage facilities. So we're asking that you consider the neighborhood, what this is. Yeah, I always thought it would end up being a subdivision, which I didn't like that, but I'd rather have it with a subdivision than a mini storage, because at least I know who was there. This place, we don't know who's going to be there, or when they'll be there, or what they're doing. And keep in mind, this is just a few feet from my daughter's house, and actually just a few feet from my house. Noise, all hours of night, anything can happen. Also, the way it's laid out, the drainage will actually end up going back towards the woods and then across his drive back through mine. That's how it's always gone. So I've got an issue with that, with my back pasture and additional runoff. The DOT, if they require a turning lane, we don't know that. That will impact my daughter's front yard, because it'll be right in the front yard. Because the driveway is right there on the edge of the property, on the south side. I just request that the board go along with the planning department's denial and the planning board's denial, and that y'all would consider denying this as well, because it is not good, I believe, for our community. It's definitely not good for us as a family. I've heard many developers come up here when they want these subdivisions, like the one behind us on Maggie Way, say, it'll increase your property value. Well, a mini storage will do just the opposite beside me. Because how many of y'all would like to live next door to the storage facility?
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any questions for Mr. Case?
Yeah, Mr. Case, I do have one question. The property is shown on the screen up there. Is that the house that's right below that? Is that your daughter's house?
Yeah, the house
Right there? Okay.
That's her house.
Okay, okay.
And my house is next to it, and then the house on the corner, coming straight up to the corner,
Okay.
is one that I rent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I'd like to speak.
Yes, sir. Step forward and state your name.
I'm the owner. My name's Bob Taylor. I'm the owner of the property. I'm also owner of the adjacent property behind it, the other 16 acres. The proposal is to move the driveway to start with to the opposite side as to not interfere with the neighbor. That's our plan to start with. That's one thing. Another thing is to put an amount of tall growing trees and bushes to adhere any light back toward their house. That's another thing. And as far as the drainage, if you look at the contour of the land, that field up there actually drains away from their property, back to the back corner of my property. And that's the things I wanted to express. Oh, and the other thing, he was talking about 24 hours a day. You know, you set rules for people not to go in there and do mechanic work and stuff like that, and you don't allow that when you're a property owner or when you're a business owner. You make sure of that. The hours will be set hours. It will not be open 24 hours a day. We're planning on the hours sometime between 5:30 and 6 o'clock opening a.m. till about 9:30 at night, shutdown time. And those will be the hours.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
The map that I was given that's in your agenda has the driveway alongside my property.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. I would like to recognize that there were 3 emails sent to the board as part of this process that were in opposition to the proposed rezoning.
Also, the young lady back there wanted to speak also.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you would just get out of the way
I
of
just
her
want to
dad.
say, I'm Cassidy Case. I own the property right next door. It's 16782 Buffalo Road, and we've been on the property for over 20 years. As a homeowner, having something like that next door to me, my house, my daughter, my animals, our farmland, it's just not the right area for it to be. Like my dad said, if it was houses, you know, I think that'd be fine. But I genuinely worry for the safety of my family, and I worry about my animals. What if people are coming in and out, and what if they, you know, go over property line? And the other gentleman that owned the mini storage that spoke earlier said, well, you know, if you don't have the lights and if you don't have all this, then that's just asking for crime. Well, we're going to be closed at 8 o'clock, so what's going to happen after 8 o'clock? Is there going to be video surveillance all the time? Am I going to have to worry about having my own surveillance all the time? It's just not the right area to do that. And like I said, it would be very impactful to our family.
Thank you. Any questions? And then, I'm sorry, I didn't see you moving to come
No,
forward.
it's okay.
All right.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, there we go. If you would state your name and address, please.
I'm Leon Cobb. I live at 16894 Buffalo Road. I'm the property owner to the north, right there. I mean, we all would love to see our little corner of paradise stay like it is, but it's changing with the houses on Maggie Way, the houses that are fixing to being built across the road. Those people need somewhere to store their stuff. And as far as the water, the blue line between me and Bobby, there's a ditch right there that runs down through the woods, and if you'll see that water hole on mine, I mean, the water comes to me and Bobby, it splits down in the woods. And as far as a mini storage, I'd rather see, a mini, about the best neighbor other than a mini storage, I think would be a graveyard, because it's, you know, when it shuts down, I don't see any of the trouble happening that we hear about or some people talk about. But I don't have a problem with Bobby putting a storage unit there. I think I'd rather see, because Bobby lives there, so he's not going to be putting up with a bunch of stuff. I'd rather see the money stay in our community than somebody in Raleigh build a storage unit down the road and the money leave our community. I'd rather it stay right there in the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? All right, anyone else?
Can I point out something real quick?
Real quick.
Mr. Tom, I understand, you look in the back corner of the property, that's his house. You look where my daughter's house is.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to close public discussion and ask for Braxton to come forward and summarize and present the planning board's recommendation.
Sir, as it relates to case 21-24, planning board does recommend denial and submits a statement of consistency for your consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Newton?
Excuse me, I have a question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman. Would it be appropriate for us to require the entrance, the ingress and egress on the north side of the property?
Yes, sir. You can certainly do that, yes, sir.
Okay.
We've closed the public.
I was just gonna say, that's where I said a while ago, we intended to move to that side anyway.
Well, we'll look at it if we get the conditions on it. Any other questions for Mr. Newton? I did have one of council, so could you mention again the two requirements we have that has to meet?
Yes, sir. The first requirement is consistency with the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
In order to approve, you must find consistency. And the second finding is that it is in the public interest. So those are the two findings that you are required to make in order to approve this rezoning request.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, I have a question. The staff recommended denial, Mr. Newton. That was based upon inconsistency with the surrounding area? Is that right? Okay. All right.
Anything else? All right. If not, I would close this public hearing and turn it over to the board for any other discussion or comments. I would just say from my standpoint, I think answering those two questions, whether it's consistent with the comp plan and surrounding uses, I think before we got to conditions, I don't think that it is consistent with the surrounding uses. And really don't need to get into conditions, but that's my thoughts. Any other thoughts or emotion?
Well, I guess since this is my backyard, I probably need to say something. It's always tough to talk about person's use of their property because I really believe in freedom and the ability to use your property, but this is totally inconsistent with this neighborhood. It's not in the best interest of the neighborhood. And I don't see how I can vote for this.
All right, any other discussion? That leaves it to somebody making a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the statement of consistency resolution as presented in the agenda packet and deny the rezoning request.
All right, we have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. All right. Preston, you are the man of the evening, so we're here for your planning activity report and an update on our land use plan.
Yes, so, yes, sir. So we are going to focus on the Envision Johnston, where we're at in the process.
If you please carry your conversation outside, please. Thank you. There you go.
Yes, sir. So what I thought I would do is, I think each of you have been provided in your packets the presentation that was provided to the steering committee for our last meeting, which was January 27th. In addition, you will find a separate copy of our concept, or the draft land use concept, that future land use map, as well as the future land use place types, those descriptions that have been reviewed thus far by the steering committee. So just looking at the presentation, we'll skip the first few pages. We'll get to process and schedule, I think, which is page 5. As you can see, we're at the time of this schedule, we were in the month of January. That steering committee meeting was held January 27th. We had very good attendance. We actually streamed that meeting as well online. Just moving forward about 3 slides. What we did was we started the meeting with an issues discussion. So we gave it was an interactive exercise to where the steering committee actually, we had them go through a SWOT analysis. So our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats as it's related to Johnston County. Once we did this, we went through that exercise, identified those 4 items, were items within those 4 categories. We actually had the group break out into smaller groups. So they looked at these issues and each group brought forward 3 ideas for action to incorporate, hopefully to incorporate it in this plan. Is what we were looking at. What are the items we need to focus most on? It was an extremely productive exercise. The group seemed to really get a lot out of it, and we're very appreciative of it. So as we did that, and we had those items identified, our goal is to connect those issues within the plan and potentially modify any of the goals, the draft goals we have, in order to reflect that. As well, we looked at the current land use patterns and development patterns that exist today and where we think they're going in the future. And then we also discussed those items as it relates to policy direction for the future. So in doing so, we continued on to our public forum discussion. We're coming up on public forum number 2 in just a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from Wednesday, as a matter of fact. We'll actually have two dates for that public forum. That is Wednesday, the 23rd of February, and Thursday, the 24th, at separate locations. The first will be at Johnston Community College from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the second will be at the Clayton Center on the 24th from 6 to 8. So what we'll do once again is we'll put the refined goals that have been drafted or been proposed so far by the steering committee. We will put those before the public for additional comment. If they need to be refined, we want to get their feedback to determine if they need to be refined even further or modified, and maybe some additions to those. In addition to that, we are going to present this draft or this initial concept for the future land use map. If you're familiar with a current future land use map or a current land use map, you see that this is quite a bit different. Essentially, our current land use map has identified the county into 3 segments, and that would exist, or that contains or consists of the primary growth area, a secondary growth area, and then an agricultural conservation area. We took a little bit different approach here and decided to look at it in a little more comprehensive manner and look at the county in a little more, with a little more accuracy than the previous plan had done. In addition to that, we have, you'll see noted on there, some regional mixed use or activity centers, as well as some neighborhood centers and employment centers. And this is where, obviously, we want feedback from this group as well as the planning board on all of it, but we want to emphasize this map. This is our guide in concert with the goals and any actionable items that may come out of the recommendations portion of this plan. But this kind of lays the groundwork. This is sort of the vision for quote-unquote unincorporated Johnston County. Where our infrastructure exists, what we've done is where our infrastructure exists, primarily water and sewer, the bulk of sewer, we've identified areas of medium density and low density residential, and trying to preserve as much of those agricultural areas for rural living and agricultural type uses. And this is indicative of the feedback we received not only from the steering committee, but from those surveys that we've put out and the responses we received there, as well as the public forum number 1. In addition, it's kind of hard to have this future land use map without identifying these place types. So what we've done as well is kind of identified the place types with a description for each. And once again, you'll notice here that there is not a mention of a quantifiable, any quantity with regard to the density for lower medium density residential. This was intentional. We'd like for the public and this body as well as being the users of the plan, we'd like to get feedback as to what they believe medium density and low density looks like in Johnston County, as well as that rural living component as well. There is some illustration in those place types and in the information that you have that kind of shows you what the curb, that curb looks like, or that view from the curb looks like for those medium and low density and rural living areas. But once again, we did not want to tag it with anything that can be quantified or with anything quantifiable, as we'd rather have, we'd rather get that information or get that direction from the public and this body as well. The next several pages, we went through this exercise or these slides with the steering committee, and these are going to be somewhat indicative of the boards that we'll have available for view and response at the public forum. So essentially, we've identified each board will have the established goals, and we'll have the goals in place at the meeting as well, so they can review those and get those to correspond with each individual board. But we have some ideas about, or some scenarios of what if. So this first slide is really pertains to goals 8, 10, and 11. Conserve viable agriculture where. So we want to identify exactly where we want to preserve agriculture areas in the county and to what extent. So we had simply put some feelers out there with these areas that exist already in a present use value program, which is that agricultural or forest land exemption program. Well, not exemption, but there's a tax deferment for those being used for that purpose. Those properties that exist in our voluntary ag district. And then potentially, is there a situation where there's contiguous lands in excess of a certain quantifiable acreage that would also be considered viable agriculture area to be preserved? And we're not talking about these contiguous lands maybe being a single farm, but could be multiple farm operations under various ownership. But these slides, and there's several here, these are indicative of the boards that will be up at our public forum. So as I mentioned, we do have a public forum coming forward, and these dates, once again, are February 23rd and 24th. We did identify those dates, and we will have these meetings between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. And they are a informal, floating type event, open house type event, which we will have a directed flow in the meeting areas to ensure that the public, that we ensure they get the information we want them, we need them to see. We need their feedback on. So what we're looking at are the questions we want answered are which features of the land use concept are responsive to the goals? Do the place types represent the areas you expect to see in the county? And are the place types applied to areas that will help the county achieve its goals? And do you agree with the policy statements? And what would you add, change, or remove? So essentially right now our next steps are to conduct, to hold this public forum number 2 and receive this feedback at this phase of the plan. Then we'll take this information back. We'll take this information back to the steering committee. In the meantime, what we're doing is, once again, we're bringing this information to you, and we will have a more formal presentation from our consultant in your mid-month meeting this month. So just in a short 2 weeks' time, I guess. Is it even 2 weeks? So at any rate, we will have, they will be here that evening to give you a more formal presentation and update. And hopefully that'll give us a little more time to get into the information and get as much feedback from you as possible. We want to make sure that this is a plan that this body, being the adoptive body, that you feel comfortable with and feels like it reflects the vision for the community as the public has made us aware. So I'll be glad to answer any questions to this regard with regard to the comprehensive land use plan update at this point.
Sebastian,
Yes, sir.
to me, this is a prime topic for us to talk about on our retreat.
Yes, sir.
Will that work in your time frame for us to be able to discuss this on our retreat?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What were those dates and locations again for the?
So we have February 23rd, and that is from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and that will be at Johnston Community College. That is a Wednesday. And it will be in the grand lobby of the auditorium. So that is it is open, the lobby is open anyway. So it will be in there. The second meeting is the 24th, which is that Thursday. It's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and that it will be at the Clayton Center. The steering committee felt it was best to have two. Our last public forum was well attended, but we would have liked a little more attendance. I think one thing was the survey had just closed just prior to that, so I think a lot of people felt we had a very good response to our survey. A couple of thousand, more than a couple of thousand respondents. I think they felt, maybe some people felt like they had seen and heard, and this was just something to reinforce what was in the survey, when in actuality it was a tad more involved. However, the steering committee did feel like if we could have two meetings that would accommodate those in the west, which is our high population, and then try to get one a little more east, and we try to keep it as central as possible, understanding that, you know, as you move east, it is more rural. We don't want to cause anyone to drive any more than they really have to, and we also had to look at space and availability. And Johnston Community College is what the steering committee settled on. Ideally, it would have been nice to do four meetings, but that's kind of difficult to do in that kind of time frame. It was tossed out to conduct dual meetings on individual days to get the 4 meetings in. However, you would look at a mid-afternoon or midday type meeting, and we just felt that would not be extremely productive at midday.
All right, any other questions?
When you sent that stuff out on the email I looked at, I couldn't see it as well as I can here in this hard copy, but it's interesting. The devil's always in the details, but I feel like we got a pretty good roughed out thing to deal with here.
Yeah, if you, and I would appreciate if you review the material, the place types and land use specifically, future land use map as well. If you review those materials and have any comments or any directive there, please let me know. We'll be glad to relay that to the consultant and make sure that's considered and incorporated in the draft or in the working document. You know, our intent is to make sure this is a document that everyone's pleased with. It's going to be a give and take, but once again, this is a guidance document. It is not set in stone. It is subject to revision or subject to modification at any time. Essentially, when this body acts on a rezoning, you, in essence, modify your land use plan. That is essentially what your statement of consistency does. So it essentially modifies that land use plan, which is fine. That's what it's intended to do. But this is a guidance document, and we will, once we have an adopted plan, we will stay on top of that and make sure it's updated on a 5-year increment, if not sooner, if need be. And that is quite possible at the current rate of growth we're experiencing.
Very good.
All right, thank you very much.
Sir, thank you.
And Mr. Hester, manager report and comment.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Chris Johnston is here. He and Chad McClain have been working with Galot Motorsports Park on a grant opportunity they have. And this is more of an FYI and make sure that the board's okay with us moving forward. It doesn't involve any county money, but it's supporting them in a specific grant here in North Carolina for motorsports. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Chris.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Extremely brief. The lobbyist group for the North Carolina Motorsports basically got set aside about $40 million for tracks across North Carolina, which obviously Galot is one of those. So it's specific for a specific business, not necessarily for small business, for anything else. So that's some of the questions that we had. Basically, it's a grant from Commerce directly to the track. They just need a local government commission or local government body to do a pass-through. So from this body, they'll just be needing a budgetary amendment to receive the money and then send it to Galot. Basically what they've done in a nutshell is they've asked Galot and any motorsports to open up their books from 2018, 2019, and say how much did you lose in 2020 based on what you should have received. And so it's basically clean and cut. The county's not, there's no clawback provision. It's basically if you did exactly what they said you need to do of showing what your books are and showing the loss of revenue, then it's just basically a check from the federal government through the state, and it should have gone directly to the company, but they need a local government commission to receive that. We'll still continue to work with Galot. It's a 2-page application that they're actually filling out. They're actually submitting it. We'll be submitting it to Commerce, but they'll just need a local signature saying that this body will receive the funds once it does come in and meets all the criteria that Commerce has set forth. So I just want to make sure y'all get the deadline for the grant is then this month, so we can come back and obviously have something in the agenda at your 2017 meeting, but just want to make sure that y'all had a heads up, and if there was any questions that I needed to ask the Wells family or anybody working with them to do so, I'll be more than happy to do so.
If you bring it back to us, it sounds
thank you, sir.
Sounds easy enough for us.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any more comments? So